Edtech Monday Kenya is brought to you by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT and Edtech East Africa.
Glad you could join us on another edition of Edtech Monday Kenya, enabled by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT and Edtech East Africa. Information communication technologies are increasingly being integrated into the education system. ICTs have improved access to education and are constantly looking at ways in which the intervention of technology as a tool improves outcomes and skills. So it's only right that this month we shift our focus to coding. Coding is simply the language used to give a computer instruction to perform specific functions. It's the primary back-end method for communicating with a computer, enabling the creation of software, websites, apps, animations, and so much more. In June this year, Kenya's Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology introduced a coding syllabus, the first of its kind, and is expected to be piloted in 100 primary and secondary schools with the goal to equip learners with 21st century skills to accelerate the future of work in coming years. Coding for learners in Kenya. Is it about time? Our panelists are Viola Kunji, an alumni and winner of the Pwani Techno Girls Code Hack COVID-19 edition of 2020. She is currently part of the EU's MobiPeace Hackathon for Social Media for Peace 2022. And she also assists in training young girls in mobile development. Maxwell Fundi, co-founder and director at EduTab Africa. EduTab is an edtech consultancy company that works to be an enabler of better use of technology and innovative practices in education. And we also have Martin Mungai, national trainer ICT mathematics education at Semestia. Serving in the STEM education and ICT departments, he's mentored many students in the ICT field. He also chairs the Association of ICT Mentors and ICT Teachers in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to EdTech Monday Kenya. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, and our sign language interpreter is none other than Rose Omolo. And to begin with, I'd like to say that just like numeracy and literacy, there has been conversations around should we also make coding part of the basic skills that learners need to use in the education system in Kenya. Viola, I want to hear your take on this. What do you think?
I do believe that coding should be taught as a basic skill now, especially since the world is kind of moving away from the industrial era into the technology era. Like I could say, data is becoming like the new oil. So if you know how to use data, how to manipulate data, it's more of an advantage to you. And you can't really run away from technology with whatever field. For example, in medicine, with biotech, with its advances, doctors need to know how to program these machines, how to code these machines in order for efficient use.
I like that. Maxwell, what do you think? Is it about time we added coding to literacy and numeracy in our learning institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I believe very strongly that it's about time. We've already had some of that, as you mentioned, that there's now a coding curriculum approved by KICD, which has been launched. And a lot of studies have shown that coding has been very beneficial to learners despite any of the career path they need to take, whether computing, medicine, as she said. And these benefits come from the skills that you get through the process of learning coding. This could be skills that a teacher would never come to class and say, today we are training you on collaboration, for example. So through the process of learning coding, learners acquire skills like collaboration, creative thinking, computational thinking also, that enable them to thrive even in other fields they go to.
I like that. Martin, I want to hear from you. I mean, we keep talking about, yes, it's about time, but is it really about time?
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree any less with my colleagues in terms of is it the right time? Yes, it is, and we are in a space where the learners are actually experiencing a lot of changes happening in our schools and in the world out there. And in line with our sustainable development goals, where we're looking at equitable and quality education, part of the target of the SDG is to equip our young learners with ICT skills. And yes, it is the right time because we see that the world is actually moving into, tech space where a lot of jobs are being created in the tech world. So it's the right time, and we need to prepare our students to be ready for employment and also to play around in the space that is to come in the future.
Right. Some say it's a bridge too far because of the equity issues that you've talked about. But what would you say to those who are saying, no, it's not time yet?
Well, I would say that it is it's going to disadvantage maybe those who are perhaps not able to access technology. But we see that learners actually adopt what they're given to them, and they're able to grow up and pick up new ideas. And when you talk about problem-solving skills, like Maxwell has just talked about, it's something that needs to be nurtured through and through, and critical thinking. And so therefore, our young learners will actually be able to embrace this particular approach to coding and accept it as part of the curriculum and as part of learning.
Okay. Maxwell, if I come back to you, technology, of course, is looked at or viewed as the currency of the future. But when people talk about the future, they forget that the future is now. How do we encourage a new generation of learners who are not just keen on using already created technologies, but a generation of learners who can create technologies for us to use in a country like Kenya?
I think my first point would be related to what Martin does, availability of mentorship. So mentorship is really key in terms of enabling learners to identify what's possible and what's available, which acts as an inspiration to them to actually go out and do more. And this also extends not just to learners, but also to teachers, so that teachers are also empowered to be able to inspire the learners to become tech creators. Additionally, I feel that the environment, either the school or the community, also contributes quite significantly, because when you think about schools, for example, for the young learners, it's been proven that they learn more through play and project-based activities that have a product at the end. And therefore, once students start seeing the products they make using coding, they get more inspired, they get more curious in ways that it gets them to do more. And finally, in terms of community, I think that, for example, in our case, EduTab Africa, we've seen a lot of success working with a community library that has a network of schools that learners can walk in on Saturdays or even on holidays, where they have infrastructure, they have computers, they have instructors there, where we support either virtually or physically. And so you find the people within the network of the community library who do not have access to the computers at their school, then can just walk into the library. So those three things, I feel that, will, if put together properly, then it will lead to learners who can create tech for the future.
And so are we training our learners and our teachers to train other learners in coding, or putting it in a more straightforward way? What are the challenges that are experienced or that are keeping this process of teaching coding in our learning institutions such a slow-paced process?
Thank you, Joy. I think that's a very key question in terms of our teachers ready to roll out coding. And we are in the space of competency-based curriculum. And in the curriculum designs, one of the learning areas that the students are exposed to in science and technology is digital technology. That strand on coding has been rolled out. And at Semester, one of the things that we have tried to do is to prepare materials that are palatable to our teachers and learners. And having identified the gaps that are there, in terms of lack of the necessary skill set that our teachers, with our teachers, we try to prepare materials that will help the teachers actually be able to teach coding in a very simplified manner. We're actually calling it demystifying coding. And one way of doing that is ensuring that the materials that we are preparing have enough activities for the learners to actually do and practice in a very friendly and a very easy way.
So would you say that the challenges outweigh the possibility of coding succeeding entirely in our learning institutions?
Well, in every challenge we see a solution to that, and that's why we are trying to develop materials that will actually help our teachers. And over and above that, we try to train them, capacity build them, to be able to roll out this training to the teachers, to cascade the same to the teachers, in our schools.
Okay. And speaking of demystifying, like Martin said, Viola, I want to come to you. How are you demystifying coding to girls and women in your space, and how are they taking it up?
Like for Polytechno girls, they create platforms for girls and young women to show them that there is space for them in tech. You'll find that a lot of the girls, they have the passion and the drive to be in tech, but they can't afford the classes or the resources that's needed for them to learn coding. And one of the main programs that Polytechno Girls has is the Code Hack training for young girls in Kenya, which aims to provide the girls with employable coding skills such as web development, where they learn HTML, CSS, and functioning languages such as JavaScript. Then in mobile app development, they first of all start with the MIT App Inventor, which uses like the block format of coding while still using Java, and that's like eases them into learning to code. Then later on they're taught an advanced language such as Flutter. And the good thing about Flutter is the apps made by Flutter, they're cross-platform, meaning they can be installed in Android or iOS, Windows, Linux, etc. Then later on, they're taught digital marketing. So how are they going to sell their products? How are they going to get investors? How are they going to reach their target audience? And what wraps all this is representation. A lot of the tutors at Polytechno Girls are women, and a lot of the actually, most of the stories are success stories of women in tech. And for young girls, when they see someone who looks like them, someone who's gone through the stigma and the challenges of being a woman in tech, and regardless of all of that, they've still succeeded in the field, they get that spark of encouragement of, if she can do it, then I can too.
Maxwell, speaking of a learning process, rolling out a syllabus like the one that the Cabinet Secretary for ICT rolled out last month is one thing, but making it accessible is also another. And given your experience working with teachers and learners, maybe you can share with us some of the workable suggestions in opening up coding to all, including learners living with disabilities and those in displaced communities.
I think one of the biggest contributor to success of rolling out any coding form of curriculum is understanding your context, because you may find that the activities that you can do with technology that are related to coding, and there are those you can do without technology. We normally call them unplugged activities. So one of the biggest things is to think around, the environment where you're in, and figure out which of this either technology or non-technology activities that can be useful for the context you're in. And this comes quite hugely with what Martin does, which is mostly capacity building. Teachers to be able to identify this, because all schools cannot be the same. You cannot have all schools having exactly the same infrastructure, and they cannot all be in Nairobi. Therefore, for example, for places where we work, which are quite marginalized, we find unplugged activities that are really useful in terms of they can be done without any form of technology. These include games like robot game, where people think about a maze and getting the student to go through the thinking process that is involved to get up to a certain point, which then, as I said earlier on, that process enables the students or the learners to acquire specific skills that would be really useful in coding.
Okay. Martin, teachers play an integral role in the success of any education. What should be considered when skilling teachers in coding?
A teacher is trained to teach many subjects. And we believe that when they're introduced to coding, they don't have to have any prerequisite knowledge. I think perhaps you just say that they just need basic ICT skills. Because the way coding syllabus is being rolled out is in such a way that it makes it easy for any teacher to actually take it up and roll it and run away with it. And like I said, some of the materials that we prepare, we ensure that teachers are able to use them in a very easy way, to be able to teach. And of course, at Semester, we've been able to support many schools. In 2016, through Semester, the government of Kenya, through the Semester, were able to identify 103 STEM model schools, where we equip them with high-value equipment. Part of it is robotics, like Maxwell was actually saying. And we trained teachers from different subjects in coding. And we were happy to actually see them, really enjoying what they're doing. So I believe that even in the DLP program, the Digital Literacy Program, we have teachers who will be able to take it up and continue training and teaching these students on coding.
Okay. Viola, would you say the road to training other teachers has been an easy one? Because as one of the beneficiaries of Technogirls or Pwani Technogirls, would you say that there are certain observations on the challenges that teachers were experiencing passing down knowledge to the learners?
Okay, from my personal experience, the mentors that I had during Pwani Technogirls, they didn't show a lot of challenges, because I guess a key thing was a lot of them had a computer science background or a programming background. But what really stood out is the patience that they had with me and the rest of their cohorts, because programming or coding needs a lot of practice, and through practice a lot of mistakes will be made, a lot of bumps will be made. But then them having that patience shows that it's okay and it's part of learning, and it removes the pressure of having to get it immediately or for it to be perfect. So I'd say the patience that the mentors and the tutors had played a really, really big role on my passion in coding.
Maxwell, if I come back to you, can our curriculum accommodate a new addition for coding for learners, given the teacher-learner ratio that we have in the country today? I think for every one teacher, there are hundreds or at least tens of students that they are meant to be teaching. If we added coding into the whole equation, how are we going to do on that front?
We wouldn't specifically call it addition, because if you look at 844 system, which I was a beneficiary, and coupling it to what she has been saying about mentorship, we did computer studies in high school. And part of the reason why I ended up then studying computer science is because I had two teachers in my high school who really motivated us to get into this, computing and, technology-related things. So I believe that aspects of technology have been there even in the current curriculums that we have, like 844. And even in CBC, as Martin has rightly said, in science and technology learning area, there's a strand on coding. And we see, even in primary school at the moment, they're being introduced to coding with Scratch in CBC. So I believe even with the current problems with teacher ratio, I believe coding can also even be incorporated in any other areas, not just a standalone thing, but then it's incorporated in different learning areas, and therefore I don't feel very strongly that it's a completely new thing because it's already in existence. And even some of the schools we've worked with, we've seen a lot of interest in teachers wanting to know, how can I teach this Scratch better? How does this work? Can you guys help us, figure out how to do this? So I feel that some teachers, a lot of teachers I would say, are quite excited about these coding and technology bits that have been introduced now even at the primary levels. And I feel that while we may think it's adding a lot more load to the teachers, there are still opportunities to use that as a way to actually upgrade into, getting teachers to teach more of this coding.
Okay. Martin, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I wanted to add that because when Maxwell was talking, I was just thinking in my mind, sometimes the teachers will say, oh, the workload is too heavy, but they will always have time to do some extra bit. Part of my experience in teaching is that when a teacher is positive about something, they'll always create time and be able to help their learners walk away with that. When I was teaching, one of the students in high school always used to come to my class after 4 o'clock and would sit in the computer lab, and would ask questions. And interestingly, this student was seeing the computers for the first time when he came to Nairobi School. And by the time he graduated, he was not just the top student in that class, but he was among the top students in the country. He ended up getting a scholarship in Claflin University, where he ended up again graduating, as a top student. Right now, he's working for HP, which is big, and he comes back to mentor other students and around. So yes, teachers can create time. They only need to have a positive attitude, and they will be able to create time and help these learners do this.
Amazing. Yeah. So in closing, what does the future of coding look like, in Kenya for our education system? Is it a mix of issues, or do we have like a straightforward line for coding or a straightforward plan? Well,
I think it's very clear now that coding is actually now being accepted as one of the areas of study in our schools. And yes, I think the future is very bright, and I see Kenya continuing with providing leading roles in the tech world, because we'll have equipped our learners with the necessary skill set that they need to continue building on that. But also, more importantly, just the exposure, giving these students the exposure into coding is actually placing them on another level that will help them become more creative, more innovative, and we'll end up continue having, who knows, we'll continue having the next Bill Gates coming from here in Kenya.
Right. Viola?
In addition to that, the good thing is there are already so many resources that are free and available to teach coding and programming in Africa, especially Google's CS Fast and Plug, which is teaching the basic concepts of computer science and the fundamental concepts of computer science without using a computer, but it's more of games and puzzles, because for a lot of the kids, like he said, it will be their first interaction with a computer when they do decide to venture into it. But the good thing with CS Fast Unplugged is that they get like an intuitive learning of what they're doing instead of just cramming or just doing this thing that's going to maybe get them money or a job later on, but an intuitive sense of it. I think the future of coding in Africa is quite bright right now.
All right, Maxwell.
Yeah, I would like to agree with the other panelists that the future of coding is so bright, and as it's been rightly said, right now there's just so much resources that are freely available for anyone to learn coding. And I'm even super excited about other programs that have been rolled out. For example, even setting up schools like Moringa School, for example, Zalego, which have very specific industry tech skill that they are teaching to people. And the fact that all this is happening at this time, I can only imagine how bright the future will be for coding in Kenya and in Africa.
Great. That's a good way to close this conversation for us, Viola, Maxwell, and Martin. Thank you all for making time. And to watch all editions of EdTech Monday, head over to the Mastercard Foundation YouTube channel. You can also follow the Young Africa Works Facebook page and share your feedback with us. We'd love to read it. From myself and the entire team, thank you all for watching this edition. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now.
EdTech Monday Kenya was brought to you by the Mastercard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT and EdTech East Africa.